Hi, we're back again today on coffee and chatter. Today's topic is going to be the Constitution. You've already posted an audio of volume 3 of this series, but I'm going to do the whole thing with the video here. The series is called It's the Constitution, Stupid. Again, my camera's there, my text is there, and I'm trying to avoid the blare or the glare, I should say, in my glasses. So I got to move my head around, and my eyes will be shifting over, but we could deal with that. So, we want volume 1, which is volume 1. That's what it's called. All right, Joe Biden was misquoted at some point saying, no, I believe Obama was president at the time. And he said, no ordinary American cares about constitutional rights. That was fact-checked and proven to be untrue concerning what he said in 2013 at a weapons control forum. It was fact-checked by, amongst others, PolitiFact and listed as false. And I'll give it to him. That's not exactly what he said. So, being all for the truth as I am, I want to see what he actually did say that got everybody's panties in a knot. How about this? No law-abiding citizen in the United States of America has any fear that their constitutional rights will be infringed in any way. None, zero. Typical Joe Biden. Well, that changes things, right? Not really. A little bit of different wording, but, same thing. So his real comment was actually as bad as the false comment that was attributed to him. Let me be clear, Joe. I, for one, am deeply concerned about the infringement of what some incorrectly refer to as constitutional rights. Actually, they're God-given rights. They don't come from government. The Constitution doesn't give them. The Constitution mandates government to protect them. God-given rights, on the other hand, are natural and afforded to all human beings. Of course, sometimes we have to fight for them. That's just the nature of the game. So, do we fear that they're being taken away? That might be a little strong, but it's going to get to that eventually. We got a couple things in the pipeline here. Attempts to control guns, attempts to control speech. Big tech is going nuts, censoring. You can't say that. You can't say that. So look around what's happening under the guise of our elected officials protecting us from our from a so-called lethal virus that I guess we're incapable of protecting ourselves from. Frankly, I don't remember asking the government to intercede on my behalf. I'm almost 70 years old, and I've taken care of myself my whole life. I didn't need the government to do it. But, as Governor Murphy said, when he put his restrictions in place, he wasn't thinking about the Bill of Rights. It's above his pay grade. So they seem hell-bent on not having one person die from COVID-19. When did they get so concerned about life? That's what I don't understand. We got 60 million abortions under our belt, and we got people dying from influenza, pneumonia, heart attacks, opioid overdoses, and the list goes on and on. But we can't have anyone die from the COVID. We got to protect that. So, PolitiFact, how about this? How about you fact check this, you and dopey Joe Biden? I am an American, and I can assure you I represent hundreds of thousands of other Americans. I'm normal in that way, if not millions, and I'm very concerned about the way my rights are being abrogated by executive decision, posing as legislated law. It must stop. Otherwise, this ain't going to work out to anybody's good. I'm now going to move on to Volume 2. And that is titled The Constitution, a Living Document? Question mark. Look, regardless of what our progressive leftist friends tell us, the Constitution is not a living document. In fact, they've killed it. It's a dead document. DOA in 2021, a whisper, a relic of what it used to be. And it is my opinion that there is no longer any major U.S. political party that honors its oath to uphold and protect the Constitution. They raise their hand to it, but I don't see it in action. The Democrats, they don't even try. They don't even make an attempt to act like they're honoring it. And the behavior of the Republicans belies the fantasy of their fidelity to our founding documents. I don't see it. Possibly libertarians care about it, but when a party supports unfettered prostitution, wide open borders, access to all kinds of dangerous drugs, you're not going to appeal with that message to the normal working American people trying to raise families. That message is not resonating. Look, how many libertarians do you know in office? How many do you know that work hard to get their candidates in office? They run for president, it seems, all the time, but they don't have a party. They don't have a base. They don't have a foundation. Just juxtapose the number of libertarian office holders you know against how many years they've been around trying to win the presidency. And then telling us, oh, it's a principled vote of conscience. There's no such thing as a wasted vote. Well, there's a wasted vote. So libertarianism is a high ideal, but it's certainly not a real political movement. So I'll reiterate. There is no longer any major U.S. political party, and I will add of consequence, that honors its oath to the Constitution. Bottom line, the American people have been abandoned by the political class, who have become nothing more than a self-serving oligarchy. When the hordes come invading, I won't be rallying around any corrupted crat offering my assistance. Volume 3. Is the Constitution adequate for the needs of a free people? The Bill of Rights is rounded off by the 9th and 10th Amendments. I think they pretty much sum it all up. In other words, whatever we missed, we didn't mean to miss. It includes all this. It doesn't include this. Amendment 9, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage other rights retained by the people. So just because a right is listed doesn't mean that's the end all of rights. Those were just rights that they really thought were important and needed to be spoken of, like we have a right to free speech. It's not granted in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. It's the government is told to protect it, not to interfere. Amendment 10 then wraps that up and says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. So unless the federal government is specifically designated as having certain powers, those powers don't exist. They are the rights of the state to exercise those powers, not the federal government. The Ninth and 10th Amendments, the final seals put on the Bill of Rights, pretty much say it all. The reins are put on federal government and federal power. A wall is established around that power, and the states are essentially given free rein to control everything not specifically designated as belonging in the sphere of things to be controlled by the federal powers. So what's the problem? Convention of States, right? Why do we need a Convention of States? How is that going to fix anything? How is that going to change anything? People want term limits and so forth and so on. Look, when an inebriated citizen locally to here fired his weapon into the air one New Year's Eve, the bullet unfortunately came down and struck another citizen. I think he was only wounded. But it raised a concern, and of course, that prompted a local councilman who wanted to act like he was doing something to propose a new law making it illegal to fire a weapon into the air on a holiday. Unfortunately, it's already illegal to do that. You're not allowed to fire off your weapon in public. It's illegal. Whether you fire it in the air or at the ground or on Halloween or on New Year's Eve, it's illegal. So what are we going to do? Make another law that can be disobeyed? Likewise, we've been ignoring the Constitution and the Bill of Rights for years. Should we make more amendments that can be ignored? You want to tell me that the First and Second Amendments and what they talk about, that the government should not interfere in free speech? Look what happened with the right to practice your religion here in COVID. Did they interfere? Told you couldn't go to church. It's a wonder they didn't tell us you couldn't pray at home. And do you think they're trying to interfere with our gun rights? The Second Amendment doesn't establish gun rights. It says don't interfere with the gun rights. So we need another amendment that they can disobey. They can ignore, that they swear to, but probably couldn't quote. Let's look at the original Convention of States, which is actually what the first Constitutional Convention was. We had as our founding document the Articles of Confederation that described government and how things were to be run. But they were so weak because the founders were concerned about giving power to the federal government. They knew what would happen. They just fought a war with England. So the articles proved to be very weak, and really the federal government had essentially no power. So they said, all right, we need to fix this somewhat. Let's get together in Philly and we'll fix it. Not get rid of it, fix it. What did they do? They got rid of it. Some came with the idea of saying, hey, let's just scrap this thing and start over. Not everybody was on board with that, but that's what happened. That's not the mandate they were given when they went, but that's what they did. They had different ideas, and that's where your differences arose, disagreements between what I call the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. I don't know if I have my meanings correct, but to me, a Federalist, well, we have federalism that says the federal government only has certain rights. Unfortunately, to me, a Federalist was a person who wanted more power in the centralized federal government. And the Anti-Federalists, such as like a Patrick Henry type, they wanted less power in the federal government. In the end, it appears that the Federalists kind of won out, but the Anti-Federalists that's when they forced the Bill of Rights. Not that anybody disagreed with the Bill of Rights. They all understood the rights. They just, many of them thought, well, we don't need to reiterate this over and over again. Whereas those concerned about the rights of the people said, well, next thing you know, we'll be forgetting about all this stuff, so we want to put a reminder. And that's, to me, where the Bill of Rights came from. So the Articles of Confederation were scrapped and a new Constitution was put in its place. Now, the only reason the Anti-Federalists got on board was because they were ultimately placated by a promise to return at some later date and establish a Bill of Rights. The restrictions on government regarding the liberty of we the people were not codified. This is what I said earlier, because the conventioneers thought they needed to be codified, as if they didn't already exist. The Bill of Rights was codified because the Anti-Federalists, the small government people, were concerned that the restrictions on federal power and the rights of the people would eventually get confused, forgotten, or worse yet, ignored. Voila, 2021. So, my point, when you call a COS, to my knowledge, you don't call it with, okay, here's what we're going to do, 10 things, and that's all we're going to do. I don't believe that's how it works, and there are other people who agree with me. I've heard other people say, oh, yeah, you can control it. I don't think you can control it. Once you let that beast out of the cage and you're holding the tail, man, that thing is going wild. You're not, number one, putting it back in the cage. So your team, whether you're a conservative or a progressive, is not guaranteed control over a convention of states. Everybody wants control, but who knows what's going to happen. Is my opinion that the only reason the first COS didn't become shipwreck was because at the time we had a lot more clear-thinking people than we do now in office holders in government. Today they don't know what they're doing. And in the end, not everybody was happy, but as founding documents go, our Constitution is right up there. I don't think there's anything else that compares. And then the Bill of Rights was just the icing on the cake. So it could have been a lot worse. And I don't think I trust people today to come up with such a good idea as what happened the first time. I don't think it would be as successful. But hey, look, maybe before we go to a COS, let's try adhering to the Constitution we already have. That's the problem. The problem is not having enough regulations or restrictions. The problem is we don't abide by what we have. But that makes too much sense, doesn't it? Well, thank you for joining me for Coffee and Chatter. And I'll see you next time.